Hi, good afternoon. I'm Lieutenant Commander John Lucas. I'm going to talk to you about piracy, anti-piracy, and counter-piracy. Consider in a hostile environment, relatively sparsely populated. You've got a lot of items, equipment, material moving across, and the natives are kind of restless. They're unlawful. They're not really very well organized, coordinated. They come in. They do a lot of counterattack raids. They kind of grab everything that they can and they go, and they take what they can and they use it in other areas. Law enforcement has really been very lax, very unable to control this problem, and as a result, the military has been called in. Now, what I might be describing is the Wild West in the 1800s, but what I'm also describing is the Gulf of Aden in the current fiscal environment. My last deployment from February to August of 2009. Halfway through, we had a change of command with a CO. The first captain's call that he had about 2 weeks into his command was to gather everybody together and tell them that we'd been extended, so that we could go down into the Gulf of Aden and conduct counter-piracy and anti-piracy operations. And what I'm going to talk to you today is some of the stuff that I learned while I was down there. All right, so we're going to go through an introduction of the situation, the geopolitical region, some of the problems and concerns that are currently surrounding piracy, and then some of the systems that are in place right now, both on the merchants and on the military side, to counter the situation, and then the conclusions. At the end of this, I expect that you'll be able to identify the 3 major problems associated with counter-piracy in the region, and then there are 4 major solutions that are in place right now, and be able to recognize those. All right, this is the Gulf of Aden. A huge portion of the world's trade goes through this region. What you can see is that there are basically only 4 paths coming out of these Hormuz. So they go through the Gulf of Aden down here, and then up through the Suez Canal. Nearly 8% of Europe's trade goes at this part of the world. 8% of the world's trade and 12% of the world's oil. As you can see, that the area around there between Yemen, Somalia, Ethiopia, Sudan, it's really a powder keg of lawless and terrorist-supporting nations. Does not make a great basket for lawful commerce. And then here is a current chart of the Gulf of Aden. What I'd like to take away from that is the size of the region, 150 miles across, 400 miles wide. Nope. All right. So Somali piracy has been going on since 2007 up through even last week. What you can see in the chart here is that in 2007 there were several attacks, approaches, hijackings, and then they kind of increased and escalated through 2008 and 2009. The red ones are the successful hijackings, and the yellow bars are the successful attacks. And you see down here in the lower, this is a headline from one of the newspaper, that piracy figures for 2009 surpassed those in 2008, and that was in September. So there was still several months left in the year for it to get even worse. And then 2010 is shaping up to be no less active. So there's 3 major problems and challenges that we have in the region. The first is identifying what is a pirate and what is an act of piracy. There's the obvious black and white example that someone that throws a ladder overboard, climbs on your vessel, and takes you hostage is a pirate. That's easy. Anything less than that, you start to get into the gray area, legal mumbo-jumbo, and trying to figure out what is the difference between a pirate and a fisherman. Is it just because he has a weapon? Everybody out there in the Gulf of Aden has an AK-47, and I really don't blame them. It doesn't make them a pirate. So what sort of characteristics can be used to identify them before they get on board the vessel? And then there's a large region there. I showed you that chart earlier on, 150 nautical miles across, 400 nautical miles long. That's 60,000 square nautical miles. It's a lot of area to cover with limited military hardware. And then finally, merchants will continue to remain a soft target. By that we mean that they take very few defensive actions on their own. Their vessels still tend to be relatively slow. They're designed for carrying cargo, not for countering pirates. So that remains a continuing problem. And then there's some items that are beyond the scope of this presentation. I just wanted to make you aware of them for future discussion should anybody want to talk about that. All right, so we've gone through the introduction of the current situation that exists in the Gulf of Aden. Now we're going to kind of shift over and talk about some of those solutions that we have in place right now. On the merchant side, there's a couple of different initiatives. In 2003, they created the Automated Identification System. It was designed following 9/11 to help port security and to identify vessels coming into the high-risk ports like Baltimore and Philadelphia and Boston. But it does translate very well to the Gulf of Aden, because what it does is if you're familiar with IFF, it's basically IFF for a merchant ship. It transmits automatically over the radio waves to a computer on the bridge their name, their registry number, what they're carrying, where they're going, everything that you could possibly want to know about them. So what we can use that for is we can use that to identify the high-risk ships that come through the area. We can see who has AIS and who doesn't have AIS, and use that to kind of filter out everybody that's in the region. Now the downside of that is it's spoofable, not something merchants normally do, but it's still possible. And it also is not universally required. So those ships that are only over a couple thousand tons are required to have it, so everybody else doesn't have it. And then even if the pirates did use it, it's unlikely that they would put on their name on their "I'm a pirate" to show up nice and bright on your computer screen. So what we had to do was come up with some sort of solution that was focused in this region, that was something that we could use to counter piracy and not just reapply an old technology. So they came up with the Mercury chat rooms in the NATO Shipping Center. These are web-based applications. Mercury Chat is basically a chat room at sea where they can communicate with the merchants back and forth with the command structure in the region. And the NATO Shipping Center is a website they can log into and tell the shipping center that they are coming through and they're a high-risk vessel or they have a high-risk cargo. And they can be used to kind of, again, filter out the ships that need extra protection. The downsides of those is that they're not widely known, and connectivity problems, both technologically from a communications perspective, but also just manpower of who's up on the bridge during a normal merchant transit at night. Those kind of concerns make these very relatively unused in the area, although that is improving as we go along. And then finally, they have the passive countermeasures. I talked about how merchants are soft targets, but we're doing several things to beat those up. Among them are encouraging them to stand extra watches, possibly use barricades and protective defenses around their entry points, fire hoses faked out, kind of thing, normal force protection things that we do. And then also speed and encouraging them to use speed and maneuver. The ships that speed up and turn if they're under attack are significantly less likely to be successfully pirated. It's not something that they're aware of. As a general rule, they think like merchants, not like naval officers. So we need to make them aware of that as we go through. The goods of that is that it's always up on scene. It's always there. It's on the merchant ship as it begins. The downside of that is that if they break through these kind of barriers, then the attack is already in progress, and it's unlikely that we'll be able to get there in time to stop that attack in progress. So the taglines. They can be effective efforts. However, you still need a naval force in place to deal with the actual problem of piracy.